Okay, so with not much we can all be doing apart from isolating, I thought I'd do a quick video on 4 bikes that I was recently riding for Motorcycle Sport and Leisure. So this is a magazine here in the UK. I don't do as much journalist work these days. Just been doing other things with the tours and stuff. But it's good to get out on different bikes just to see what the market's, where the market's at really, what kind of, how the new bikes are riding and feeling and performing. And I think there's always been a thing with the mainstream motorcycling market, and mainly with the press itself, that focuses, I guess, on the big brands. If Honda's got a new bike, then it's all over media, it's all over the magazines. Triumph, KTM, BMW, all those established bikes, they launch a bike and it gets a lot of press. Some people accuse the press of being biased and paid off by the manufacturers. Having worked for the magazines years gone by, there's nothing of that sort of sinister nature, but what there is sort of an ongoing relationship between the mainstream brands and the mainstream magazines, in the sense that they both need each other. And so if KTM or Triumph came out with a slightly lackluster product, it's very likely that the emphasis would be on the good points rather than the bad points. And that's just to keep a healthy relationship. So it's kind of understandable, but it means that when somebody, say like Royal Enfield, releases a Himalayan, there's not that same relationship. So it's very easy to diss the Himalayan, and that's why you saw it with 3 out of 5 stars in Motorcycle News and other sort of media circles. It's very easy to knock a bike that's been produced by a manufacturer that doesn't sit at the high table. And I think it's sort of that's influenced the mind of buyers as well. And so the idea of this test was to look at 4 bikes from 4 manufacturers that were kind of new to the adventure bike market, but I thought offered something really interesting and really unique. So this isn't a comparison, this was never a comparison to see which is the best of these 4 bikes, but it's more of an assessment of what each of those 4 bikes did and who they might be most suitable for. Doing a 4 bike sort of round up and test is always a bit difficult when there's only one of you, so it did involve a lot of trips down to Thor Motorcycles in Bodmin, who all supplied these 4 bikes. They had all these bikes in their showroom. I took them out 2 days each, a bit of trail riding, a lot of road work, just to see how they were. And the 4 bikes, the Benelli TRK502X, which was a 2020 updated model, the Fantic Caballero 500 Rally, the AJP PR7, and last but not least, the SWM Superdual, the X version with a 21-inch front wheel. Starting with the Benelli, that was the first one that came directly from MotoGP, the importer. Now the Benelli is a bike that I've ridden a few times before, both in stock form with a 17-inch front and 17-inch rear cast aluminium wheels. And then I rode the X model maybe a year or so ago, which has got the 19-inch front, 17-inch rear, high lift exhaust, and a few other bits to make it more adventure-y. Now, the Benelli is one of those bikes that on paper doesn't add up in any sense. You've got 235 kilos wet weight, which is high. It's about the same as an F850 GS. Although you've got to, I always take weight measurements with a slight pinch of salt, because some don't seem genuine, and some measure theirs wet, some measure theirs dry, some measure their curb weight, so there's always a slight inaccuracy. But 235 kilos was the claim weight by Benelli, so not great, mated with a 47 brake horsepower, 500cc twin engine, A2 compliant. A lot of people wrote it off, not even worth considering. Benelli, owned by Chinese, so it's a Chinese bike that's heavy and underpowered. Okay, that's headline figures. I think MCN gave the standard model a 2 out of 5 stars, so they killed it. And I think that review killed it online, because the first thing you googled, Benelli TRK502 review, MCN came up 2 star. You're not going to consider that. And it was a real shame, because that bike was a surprise. It was a surprise because its most obvious contender is a CB500X by Honda, and in many ways it was a better bike. I think the power was equitable to the Honda. The power was more than you expected from a 47 brake horsepower mated to a 235 kilo bike. It pulled well, it accelerated well, ran out of puff at about 85, but you could make as quick a progress as you needed to in 90% of your riding moods. It also rode it well, the suspension was nicely tuned, the front brake was good, the rear was a bit weak, it had excellent levels of equipment, so you got the rear rack as standard, centre stand, I think originally you were getting Jivi Pani as a standard, you got a nice tall screen, and so in a lot of ways that Benelli was always like a real underdog of the mid-capacity adventure bike world. And for 2020 it's got a few updates, it's got new handguards, it's got a little bit of a new paint scheme, it's got a colour-coded front mudguard, it's got a tidier rear tail rack, and it's got a neater trim seat. And all in all, £5,500, I really enjoyed this bike. You know, it's one of those bikes you get on and it just feels right. It doesn't feel heavy once it's moving. I mean, yes, when it comes off the van and it's outside your house and you're pushing it up your drive, you think, this is a heavy old lump with a shitty little engine. And you know, you think, oh, I'm not sure about this. But then you get on it and it's got that GS-ness where the weight disappears as soon as you're riding. And it just feels effortlessly flowing in the way it covers ground, the way it would cover distance. Okay, you've not got that two-up overtaking blast that you're going to get with an 800cc capacity or above bike, but it's got enough to get you to where you're going. It handles well, great equipment levels, it sounds good. I think they've almost tuned it for a GS sort of exhaust note, and yeah, I think it's a great bike. The shame is it's got the 4,000 mile service intervals, which is a bit of a shame. And also, establishing the brand and that bike in the UK market has been difficult. I think it takes a leap of faith to walk past the CB500X. Certainly now with the 19-inch front of the wheel of the 2019 onwards model of the Honda, it takes a lot to walk past that and to go buy a Benelli, a Chinese-made Benelli. But I think it would be wise to try the Benelli, because I think in many ways it's a better bike than the Honda, and that's quite a statement to make, but I think they put a lot of effort into it. Honda, they just rolled their arm with the original 500X. They didn't really put a lot of effort or thought into what they were trying to achieve. It was a good buy, but almost by accident. The Benelli feels like, you've got a team here labouring to give somebody the most bike that they can for the least amount of money, and also to perform well. And I like that. I think it's got an honesty about it. How they'll hold up long term, I don't know. There's some with high mileage on the owners forum, and they seem to be doing okay. So, yeah, I really enjoyed the Benelli. If I was in that end of the market, would I buy one of those or a V-Strom 650? I'd buy the Benelli. Would I buy one of those or a Versys 650? I'd probably buy the Benelli still. Would I buy a second-hand F800 instead? That's possibly. Is it too big and heavy for the people who are downsizing their bikes, who are looking at 310 GSs and Himalayas? Yes, it's still too big and heavy for them. So it kind of falls down a chasm. I think that's the only problem with the 502. Maybe if they put the new 750 engine in with 80 odd horsepower, I think and then they charge them maybe £6,500–7,000, that's when you'd see the Benelli fly, because it'd have the power to convince people sat at home looking at spec sheets that it was quick enough for them, and I think the price would be right, especially with the Tiger 900. Triumph want 10,000 plus now for the Tiger 900. Too much money for a mid-range bike. So that was the Benelli. Next came the AJP PR7. This is like, the rally bike, adventure hero machine. And I'd lusted after one of these for quite a while, to be honest, and certainly lusted after riding one. I considered buying one instead of the Motor Guzzi to use across America when I take people across, hopefully in August if it can go ahead. So I looked at a PR7, but then thought, it's not the right bike for lots of tarmac riding. So I didn't get to ride it, but then here came the chance, and I must admit it is a stunning piece of design with a clear focus as to what they were trying to achieve, and a very clear delivery. And I think, as a small factory in Portugal, which is where they're based, to have achieved a bike which shines on so many levels with an engine that they had to borrow from somebody else, I think shows how lacking the mainstream players are in delivering something that really bites hard into what the market is currently demanding. And I think AJP did a great job. You've got a great engine. It's a 600cc old Husqvarna engine out of the TE610 that's now built by SWM in the same Italian factory in northern Italy, as it used to be. They sell the engine to AJP. They put it in this chassis, aluminium steel composite chassis, 17 litre tank mounted under the seat. You've got 300mm of travel on the front suspension and 280 on the rear. You've got Brembo brakes, front and rear. You've got a big tablet sat in front of you for your navigation aids and things like that. And, you know, I'm a competent off-road rider, but I'm not a rally rider. And I must admit, the size, the stature of this bike, it kind of shows that this is not for the novice rider. This is not a novice green laner's bike. And I even don't know if it's the right bike for green laning in the UK. It is tall, got a lot of power. You know, traction can brake easily with the amount of power it's generating, about 58 brake horsepower. And you know, from the tight Nadgery lanes of certainly North Devon near here, I was a bit out of my depths on that bike. You could imagine on the flowing straits of Morocco or Africa or North America, that bike would be in its element. The power is smooth, the handling is precise and composed. Feels very stable, certainly on the road as well. You know, you could sit at 75 miles an hour on the road with that bike and have no issue at all. And it was that transition between being a good road bike and being a good off-road bike that, to me, is, you know, they've really thought about that. Normally a bike excels at one thing and not so much at the other. Here they sort of merged the two. So I think for anybody looking at maybe a Husqvarna 701 or a KTM 690, I think the benefit of the AJP PR7 is that they designed it out the crate to be that pure hybrid machine, with the screen, with a decent tank size, with the simplicity of it. There's not a lot. There's no traction control. There's no ABS. There's no side stand kill switch. It's a completely stripped back basic machine which for travelling long distance overseas is exactly what you need. You know, the new 690's got lean sensor ABS and multiple stage traction control, which is great. But it's not what you need when you're travelling around the world or down through South America. So, to me, the AJP, a real hit and a real surprise as to how resolved it is for a small volume manufacturer. It reminds me a lot of the CCM GP450 that came out a few years ago, and that was a great bike as well, made by a small manufacturer in Britain. The problem with it was the engine. It was fine, but it was very race orientated, and it just didn't have the smoothness or the refinement that you needed at the bottom end or the mid range when you just wanted to cruise along on motorway. It always wanted to go, and it was such a light, lovely, compact package, the CCM, but it was just hamstrung by that engine just a little bit. You know, they are talking about doing a CCM GP600 with the same engine that's in the AJP. That could be fantastic, but the way they're talking with a carbon composite frame, it's going to be a stratospheric in its price range. Whereas the AJP, you know, some dealers want to do theirs, the AJP at 8.5, which at that price, I think it offers great value. That does only come with a 46 brake horsepower engine, and you have to pay another £900 to get the upgrade with the Doma exhaust and the ECU upgrade and the airbox upgrade to get to 58 brake horsepower. So, you know, you are looking at best part of 10 grand. But a very exciting bike. I thought it was very well finished. I love detail on a bike, and I love, you know, it got flexible indicator stalks, things like that, and really well thought through. I had a friend come over to visit. He had a look around it. He owned a 701. He just spent £110 on 2 new indicator stalks for his Husqvarna because they're rigid and you can only buy them as a pair. So he tells me. So, you know, things like that. They really thought about how you would use this. You can also fit hard or soft luggage to it. So I think if you just wanted a bike out the crate to take to Morocco and enjoy the piste riding, you know, compared to a 450L Honda, CRF 450L with its short service intervals, you know, it blows that out of the water. Compared to what else can I think of that would be a 701, 690, again, you know, the fact it's coming with the screen and the big tanks as standard make it incredibly appealing, albeit it doesn't have the power of those bikes. Just trying to think what other bikes. The 1008 700, okay, price wise it's on par with the 700 1008, and in some ways the 1008 will be a better bike, certainly if you're doing more road miles. But but the fact is that the AJP is 50 kilos lighter than the 1008, so automatically you've got an added advantage, a huge advantage when taking it off road. So yes, Benelli was great. Much bigger surprise than I thought, much better than I thought, and so was the AJP. Two great bikes, actually. The third bike was the SWM Superdual X. Now, I rode the standard model with the 19-inch front and the 17-inch rear, and 19-inch, is it 17 on the T model? I can't remember if it's a 17-inch rear or an 18-inch rear on the T model. I've got a feeling it's a 17. I rode that a few years ago at Motor Scotland when they had them as test bikes, or instructor bikes. And I love that bike. I thought the power was really good. Again, same engine as it's in the AJP, so really good, punchy, single cylinder, luggy, smooth, tractable engine, exciting. You know, a really giddy up, let's get going type of engine. Smooth and just a lovely bike to ride. And I remember the suspension working well, and on the hard packed gravel roads we were riding, I love that bike. I actually thought it was a fantastic package. The problem back then was it was nearly £7,800, nearly £8,000, and you had to have it with the luggage. And I always thought that's a lot of money to spend on a brand that's kind of, you know, it's not really there yet. It's an establishing brand, you know, using the old SWM moniker from the old Italian days, and now bolting it to bikes that are effectively rebranded, rebadged, rebuilt, reimagined Husqvarnas. So, you know, it didn't have a huge amount of pedigree, but yet they were wanting nearly 8,000, and you could see why most people just walked past that. The bike was really good though, and you could really see the potential. This X model disappointed me, I've got to be honest, more than I thought it would. I was really looking forward to it. I thought with a 21-inch front and an 18-inch rear, it was going to have that lovely big trail bike feel to it. And it kind of lacked that just a little bit. You know, first and foremost, the seat. It's a sculpted seat, so it forces you forward. You sat there with your helmet almost over your peak of the helmet over the front screen. And to me, that's kind of the wrong position for relaxed riding, and I would have preferred a bench seat. Other things, the suspension, fast-stage suspension on the front. I've read the owner's forums just to check it wasn't me, but people say it's an overly firm setup front and rear, and I just thought it lacked that plushness, soft-sprung, long-stroke suspension that you like on something like a KLR or a Tenere 660 or even a Himalayan. You know, I took it up one lane that I took all these bikes on, and it was just out of place on it. You know, it just chattered and just never caressed the ground in a way that you would want it to. And there is some adjustment in the suspension, and I did play around, but to me it just lent itself to more of a road bike than an off-road bike, and I thought that was a bit of a shame. The rest of the package is good though. It's got a nice compact chassis, it handles well on the road, brakes are good, engine still remains crisp. There's a few other niggles. You know, the way that they've mounted the centre stand means that you can't get your foot on the plate of the centre stand because the pillion peg is in the way. And it's pieces of design like that, you just think, come on, you just get a bit more focus, a little bit more perfection behind this, and then you could have a great product. They've also cut the price down to £6,400 for the X model. Now that is a great value buy. I mean, what else would you get for that sort of money? I guess a 390 KTM Adventure at 5.5, maybe. Not going to have the power of the SWM. Himalayan for 4, not going to have the power of the SWM. 701, 690. It's going to have more power than the SWM, but with £2,000 or £3,000 more. And the SWM comes with the centre stand and the paddy racks and the rear frame and the engine guards as standard. You know, it comes up ready to go on a big trip. And so at £6,400, it's a revolution in its good valuedness. Well, it certainly feels that way in this current age. I mean, I've got a Husqvarna TR650 Terra, which were £5,400. You know, only six years ago when they came out. I mean, that's a hell of a bike for that sort of money. So it just shows in the last 6 years that the values of the prices of bikes have just got ratcheted up, and they're not any better than they used to be. They've just gone up in price. But PCP obviously offsets that for so many people. That obviously works better for the manufacturer to have more bikes at a higher price going out on PCP than it does more modestly priced bikes being bought for cash. So I think that's probably obviously the way that the market's going to go, higher prices. But that's it. But so the SWM at 6.4, I took that back. You know, it was the only bike of the 4 I was glad to take back. And that's not to say it's not a good bike. It just wasn't a bike that suited me or that fitted my need. When looking at an adventure machine, it just needs a final bit of polish, but it's, you know, it's almost there, and you really wish SWM well, because they made some great bikes. The RS range, the Enduro bikes, they're really good bikes to ride. I've rode those bikes at Sweet Lamb over in Wales, and they're terrific packages at a really good price. So they are almost there with the Superdual, but just dial it up 2 notches, refine it all out, and I think maybe they'd be onto a real good winner. The last bike, the Fantic Caballero, or I always pronounce it wrong, Caballero Rally 500. Now this was a bike that I must admit, when I looked at these 4 bikes, I thought that's going to be the weakest link, that one. That's just going to be a plaything, something that kind of rides okay, performs okay. I mean, it's a Zhongshan engine, 450cc, 43 brake horsepower, looks a bit tarty. I didn't really expect it to be very, very capable, exciting, or appealing. I really just couldn't see who was going to buy it, because at £7,000 it's not overly expensive, but then what is it? Who's it for? And I kind of left that one to last just because I just had so little interest in it, if I'm honest. But I think you know a bike that's been designed well within a mile. You know, within a mile of riding a bike, you can generally tell. And that first mile down them lanes out of Thor motorcycles, I thought, get out this thing. It was just fantastic, exciting. It was so raucous, so engaging in the way it delivered its power. It was always on fire. The engine was always ready to go. It was always sat there waiting to push forward with this lovely Zhongshan engine designed by Ricardo in the UK, 43 horsepower, single cylinder, liquid cooled. Yeah, I don't know how they made it so urgent, so performance delivering. I mean, it felt as quick as the SWM, and the gearing was good. So even in a high gear, you got so much roll-on power, and it just made you want to ride it like a maniac. And it's a fantastic engine. How well it holds up over long term, who knows? I don't know. You know, it feels a good engine. So I think that was the immediate highlight. The second was just the riding position. It's a very scrambler-like riding position. You know, I did a bit of motocross when I was a lot younger, and it's got that sort of elbows up, arms close to your chest over the handlebar type of pose, and it really puts you in a position which makes you want to ride that bike or grab that bike by the scruff of the neck and go for a good ride. And the handling is superb. It's almost, there's no input needed. It just goes. It turns. It's, you know, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Some bikes you really have to think about how you're going to tip it in and bend and get it to turn, a bit of counter steer, set it up on the right line. This thing, so light, 150 kilos, just turn sharp, long swoopers, felt very stable. The suspension is really compliant and well damped. So I think it's the brand is an almost unbranded suspension from God knows where. I think Belgium or something that I'd seen somewhere. Adam at Rally Raid seemed to recognise it as being the same as the 310 GS suspension, but it rode nothing like that bike. You know, it was fantastically well damped on the road and just gave such precise cornering and confidence, and dealt with lumps and bumps of a UK road really well. And you know, you got a good strong front brake, you got a decent back brake, you got a clean gearbox, you got a good riding position, you got an exciting engine with a really good noise by the Arrow from the Arrow exhaust. And all in all, you know, I did about 70 miles coming back from the shop, and thought, oh, that is a firecracker of a machine, and it blew me away as to how excited it was and how excited I was when I got it home. So that was good. That was a good day. The next day, trail riding, you know, and because that's the whole thing. If it's a scrambler and a genuine scrambler, you've got to be able to go off road on it. I mean, a lot of the current scramblers are, you know, the Triumph Scrambler, and I'm trying to think, the Ducati Scrambler, they kind of just style exercises. I'm not thinking about the 1200 Scrambler, I'm thinking about the 900 range. You know, where it's more for show, heavy bikes, a little bit of ground clearance maybe, high lift exhaust, we'll call it a Scrambler, but everyone's going to ride it to pub on a Sunday and just sit and look at it. You know, that's not what the Fantic is. The Fantic is I think I've gone off at a tangent, but the Fantic is a bike that's not like that. It's a bike built for purpose, and so for dirt riding it had to excel, or it had to work really well. Initially, when I got on that bike and stood up on the first leg, you thought, what have they done? How have they got to this decision to make the side panels so flared? You know, they're so wide, mainly to encompass the high lift exhaust, that you just couldn't get a natural standing position, and it just felt all wrong. I thought, oh, why have you ruined it with? I mean, obviously it's got to happen. You've got a high lift exhaust, the panel. The exhaust gives out heat, the panel's got to have a gap between it and the exhaust. It's lined with a metal reflectant sheeting, so obviously kicks out some heat. But it meant that the stood-up riding position was ruined, really, just ruined. And I almost just didn't bother doing it anymore. I did one lane, sat down by the end of it just because I couldn't get comfortable. I thought, what a mess. How can nobody have realised that this is an issue? And obviously you probably did, but how to solve it? I persevered though, and I'm glad I persevered, because once you kind of got adjusted to it and you realise if you just came a bit further forward on the pegs and your cars went to the front of the panel rather than that straight down the centre of it, you could get comfortable, and you just had to adjust slightly. And once you were adjusted, it just seemed to deliver as well off-road as it did on-road. The engine is really nice and chuggy and luggy. First gear, it'll pull really cleanly with no clutch slip, which is really nice. It did it in a way that maybe you'd struggle on the AJP. The AJP, you had to be clean on the power all the time, you had to be positive, and that got me into trouble. On the Fantic, you could just potter along. First gear, it'd pick its way up, no clutch slip, and I love that easy nature of an engine. That really suits UK trail riding in my mind. And then the balance of the bike and a really nice riding upright position through the bars. You've got good suspension that absorbed, coped well with rough terrain at speed, and you could push on with the bike. It's a good lateral grip from the Anarchy Wild tyres, and all in all, I really enjoyed that bike. There's some issues, you've got a terrible mud splatter from the back because there's no rear mud guard. The side paddles are going to wear really badly because as soon as you start getting mud on the inside of your legs, that's going to chafe all that away. You've got other issues with the bikes, such as the switch gear, which is a terrible design. I don't even know how they managed to design switch gear and light switches as bad as they did, but they did. But those little niggles aside, I thought the Fantic was really good. It would suit anybody who just wants a really exciting package, who wants to be excited when they ride a bike. They don't want to potter around. They want to be excited. They want to go for it. They want to ride that engine, rev that engine out as high as it'll go. They want to corner with speed and precision, and they want to hit some dirt roads. I think it's got a very youthful, exciting, invigorating personality about it, the Fantic, which is quite at odds with most of the other bikes out there. Actually, most bikes, when you think about it, are quite dull in the way they deliver power and handle. You can make them exciting, but ultimately they're designed to be safe and quite sanitised. The Fantic is like, no, I'm going to rip your balls off and we're going to go for a ride. And I thought that was a real breath of fresh air. I thought it was a great bike with flaws, but what a statement from the Italians to make a bike like that. So that was a real surprise. The last bike, the Fantic, was good, really good. And if I was to rank them in terms of how impressed I was, I probably got I don't know, AJP, Benelli and Fantic sat about there. SWM just a little bit below, but these three, I mean, the Benelli's a great mid-range, cheap, long-distance tourer or commuter, A2 compliant, it's a great option. The AJP is just something unique, the unicorn of the adventure bike world, in that it is designed, tailor-made for this hybrid off-road, on-road riding, which is there's no other bike quite like it in the market, and the fact that it's been well produced, well delivered, and looks to be well made is quite unique for a small volume manufacturer. And then the Fantic, which is just ballistic and real good fun and really exciting, and deserves to be ridden. Where the pricing is on the Fantic, I'm not sure whether they'd be better going for $9 grand and making it really nice and exotic, or whether they'd be better cutting it back down and getting bums on seats. £6,000 feels tempting. Not sure, especially when you say a KTM 390 Adventure is 5.5, and it's about the same power as a Fantic. I guess that's where they're going to struggle, possibly. Who knows? But yeah, so 4 bikes from 4 manufacturers you'll probably have heard of, but aren't mainstream. They're 4 brands that get overlooked by the mainstream magazines, but I think they're 4 brands that really deserve our attention because they are going places, delivering new bikes with a slightly new twist that makes them slightly more exciting than what's been churned out by the big manufacturers for the last 10-20 years. It really shows the power of small scale. Well, I mean, Benelli's probably got tons of money behind it, so they're probably a big operator, but it just shows that maybe when you've got nothing to prove, you've got nothing to lose, and sometimes that product, as a result, is all the more exciting for it. So 4 bikes, all deserve your attention, all deserve a test ride if you can get on one. And I hope they all do well, because we need variety in the adventure bike market. It is the spice of variety is the spice of life. So that's it. I've gone on half an hour, too long probably. I know I'm going to get some thumbs down because it's all talk and no videos and pictures, but you've got to realise this: if somebody's doing high-end videos with high-end production, somebody's paying them somewhere. They're getting something for free to do something in exchange. So whether you should see the verdicts they give as being wholly accurate, I'm not entirely sure. But people are trying to make money out of YouTube, and I'm certainly not one of them. So give me the thumbs down. Who gives a shit? Over and out. Bye.